Welcome back, listeners. We are going to talk about the healing power behind some more things today, specifically food. And when you think about the foods we consume, they can have such a profound impact on us physically and mentally. They can promote our healing or not. And so the things that we ask ourselves and that we're going to ask you as listeners, are we being mindful about what we put in our bodies without obsessing over it? Are we listening to how our bodies are responding to the food we're putting in it? And are we recognizing that we are very unique, each one of us individually, and our healing is unique, how we process the food is unique? And so it's just a matter of just being very aware of that. There's no one answer. There's no one diet. There's no one right food for everybody. So It's such a unique thing. We're going to explore what we each think about that. So Dina, I'm going to throw it out to you and think, in the context of food and using it as something to nourish your body and heal with, what does that make you think about?
I'm a foodie. I just love food. I love going to new restaurants. I love all different types of cuisines. I love trying different cultures of food, the whole essence of it all, how it's prepared, and learning about the culture behind it and how they started making certain things, and then just interacting with the people that create these meals, and, sometimes I kind of look at, wow, they eat A, B, and C, and they have longevity in their culture, and then I start to wonder, what are they doing? What aren't we doing? So then I play that game of, oh, maybe if I should eat that more often, and maybe I should eat less of this. And then I play that psychological game, which normally gets me in trouble. Because sometimes we can just get so obsessed with the food and the drinks that we consume that might be harmful for the body. But you hit it right on the head when you said, Maggie, that we're all unique. Mm-hmm. So if I want to eat something that most people say you shouldn't be eating that, and it doesn't harm me and it doesn't affect me, and I'm not eating tons and tons of it, why can't I enjoy it? Why can't I have it? A lot of the times, being a retired nurse and going through some of the nutrition classes, not that I'm a nutritionist or a dietitian, I'm also a health coach. So we did learn about nutrition, and I learned to be well-rounded when it comes to food. Eat the rainbow. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that, all the different colors, all the different textures, although I love the fact of guiding people along with myself, because I always put myself in there, is eating things that are whole foods, less processed food, less things that come out of a box or a package. Let's face it, they do taste good, without a doubt, and I've heard through my experience of, like I said, my professional experience, I have heard a lot of stories of people who've had illnesses and diseases heal themselves through their food. I knew a gentleman, I went to a huge event, and I met this gentleman that had liver cancer, and he healed himself through food. He did not do traditional medical treatments. I'm not saying that that's the total way to go. Of course not. We all need to look at what our bodies are going through, what our mindset is going through. And I know, Marla, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about mindset with this as well. And I'm dying for our audience to hear that part of it, because it is a great point to make.
Well, I think for me, I think it's true for anything that, but especially for what you're consuming. If you put anything in and you feel guilty or shamed or terrible, that's the result you're going to get. Or if you eat something and you feel really good about it, like it is really a healthy thing that I am consuming and it is healing my body or it feels good, I think that it plays a role. I'm not saying it's the whole role, but it definitely is in parallel, in partnership with what you're actually putting in too. And part of that comes from just my own experience with a lot of, different levels of stress and anxiety over the years over things, and knowing what my body's depleted with and what I have to kind of find for myself. And again, not a nutritionist or a dietitian or a medical person here. I'm not giving any advice, but again, back to what you both said, we're unique. We have to find what works with us. We have to talk to our doctors about it, and we have to be flexible in that sense. But mind your mind too, not just your mouth.
Well, and that's so true. And I think too, just based on what Dina, you were saying about the example of someone healing through the food, that's what we're talking about here, right? And there is so much advice out there. What works for one person may not work for another. In fact, it probably won't work. It won't work the same for another.
No, it does not.
And the thing that overwhelmed me when I was first diagnosed with breast cancer, I was like, holy shit, I got to get my diet right. Well, what does right mean?
I was just going to ask you, what does right mean?
What does right mean? And then here's the first misstep I made. I went out and looked for the experts out here. So
yes, we tend to do that.
Yeah, I'm already outside my body trying to find the answers to what I need to put in my body, which makes zero sense. So when you think about that, it can be so overwhelming because we look for someone to give us that solution, that right recipe of what to put in our body. And nobody can tell us that. And that's the hard part of this. And so I too, like you, Dina, love food. And I love to cook, which is great. So when I got over my initial obsession of finding someone to give me the answer, I just started to experiment and I started to listen to my body. And what worked in my favor is the fact that I've never been a big fast food person. I try to avoid eating out of the box. I try to eat more natural foods and things. And so that served me. What I felt like didn't serve me is back to Marla, your point of, I love potatoes. I love any kind of pasta, any carb, fill in the blank, any carb, right? But then I would feel I'd feel shameful about it because it's like, ooh, I'm eating too many carbs and are carbs good? And oh no, sugar feeds cancer. And then, you start to get wrapped around that axle. So it can be so overwhelming. And I think the biggest thing that I have learned as far as figuring out my own leverage of food to help me heal is really to be mindful of, is what I'm putting into my body giving me the nutrients I need? And if not, how can I get those? Whether it's different food next meal or supplements that I decide to add to my diet and go from there. That's just how I try to move through my days and weeks of eating, because you're going to eat stuff you shouldn't eat or you feel you shouldn't eat. And then you can eat things that are good for you. Finding a balance, right?
Well, and Maggie, you did a lot with like food trackers to sort some of that out with your cancer healing initially, right? And working with your doctor to kind of show them this is what isn't working well for me and what is, and making those decisions from there.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point because, sometimes we feel like, okay, I'm just going to try this for a while, but then we can't remember how our bodies felt. So in order to truly listen to our bodies, we really need to write things down. And so I did.
Right.
I loved and relied on the trackers for myself because it was like, okay, if I'm gonna try to go easy on the dairy this week, for example, or maybe the gluten or something. And then I write down how I feel and what changes, because
Right.
that's the only way we're going to be able to have an intelligent conversation with our doctor or make intelligent decisions informed on what changes we're seeing in our body from said foods, right?
Right. You bring up a good point about the food can nourish our body, our cells, everything within us. But tracking how the food gives us energy, do I want to take a nap right after 20 minutes after I ate something? Or do I have this burst of energy? Let's go walking, or let's go bike riding kind of thing. So those trackers are amazing to work with. I did it the old fashioned way. I had a notebook and a pen. Doesn't matter how you track.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
You could write all the notes in your phone if you wanted to. It doesn't matter. It's just a matter of learning what your body and how it's reacting.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say there's an app for that, right? There's an app.
Oh, of course there is.
For that.
There's an app for everything.
But I think the key for the listeners here, and to remind ourselves too, I'm talking to us, is that when you write down the changes you're making or the things that you're eating or not eating, it's just as important to write down how you feel after.
Mm-hmm.
So that you make that connection.
Right. It's it's kind of like a brain gut connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about it. That's what just came to my mind just now.
Well, and also both of you, I think, are making great points for food should be enjoyable, right? If you think it's the most healthiest piece of cardboard you've ever put in your body, but it tastes like cardboard, like not so enjoyable. So you both
Ditch
love
it.
to cook, and yeah.
Well, exactly. And I will say that a friend of mine who I love dearly had told me, don't have any dairy, don't have any meat, don't have any alcohol, and by the way, no sugar.
Yep, I was told the same thing.
And I'm like, I want to live. It needs to be enjoyable. Like you said, Marla, it's got to be enjoyable.
Well, and everything in moderation, right? Like I think your question back was, if I remember, but like you just, for how long? It was sort of like forever. And
forever.
Like, so to just remind yourselves that if you do have that occasional treat or beverage, like it's not every day. So you shouldn't, again, back to not beating ourselves up for feeling shame or guilt or.
Right. There's also some things, and I'm going to bring back, the cancer realm or that avenue, because there's times when we're going through treatments or surgeries or whatever it is, radiation, doesn't matter what it is. And there's certain things that we can't eat, the smells, the taste, the textures. Okay, so if you eat a bowl of mashed potatoes because that's what satisfies you and you're getting some type of nourishment, then that's what we go with. I knew women that had very bad mouth sores because of their treatment. There were certain things they could not eat, and we're making smoothies. You got a lot of nutrition in smoothies, so once again, for the listeners, if you happen to be listening and you are going through the process and you're saying, I can't eat, I feel nauseous with certain foods, you got to do, because once again, it's paying attention to your body, advocating for yourself, and finding out what works.
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly. And that, when you think about the big things that we definitely want our listeners to think about is that we are all unique. So it's experimenting with what works with your body. And our bodies continue to change as we navigate our healing and as we just navigate day to day, right? And aging, right? What
I was just going to say, also the aging process. Oh boy.
I wasn't going to say the A word, right?
Oh, come on. We have to. It's part of life here. Come on.
What we could eat in our 20s, we can't eat as how do I even want to say it? Well, we just can't. It's not the same when we're in our 50s.
As we hit certain decades.
Yes, thank you. Well, when I was actively swimming, I'd plow through a box of mac and cheese like nobody's business.
Yep.
Now I feel guilt when I look at a box of mac and cheese. But anyway, so yeah, we're all unique. That's super important. We have to listen to our bodies so that we can truly come to know our bodies. And when we come to know them, that helps us to truly advocate. And you spoke to this, Dina, about just making sure that we're advocating for ourselves. And then also just very important to note here that we are not professionals, medical teams here recommending anything specific. It's always important to check with your professional medical team or your nutritionist before making any changes to your diet. So we just wanted to make sure that food is not a replacement. We wouldn't recommend that. It is definitely something that has healing power and to be mindful of. So, and remember, even with food, healing truly is inside and out.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you found value in today's episode.
And remember to share your real and raw insights with us by going to healinsideandout.com, where you can also find additional information and resources.